Hello again and welcome back to our course on PSE 15. In this section we're going to turn our attention to people. If you have a lot of pictures with people in, it can be very difficult to find pictures, for example, with a particular person in. Unless of course you tag your pictures with some way of identifying the people that feature. This is potentially quite a big manual exercise, particularly if, for example, you go to a party, you've got your phone or your camera with you, and you take a couple of hundred pictures, and you're really going to need to go through all of those and not just tag one event, for example, but you may be tagging several people in a photo, which can make it a very onerous task. For this reason, people tagging in PSE has been developed a lot over recent versions. And now, in, if you like, a similar way to the way that we've just seen with events in the preceding section, there are automatic ways of tagging photos with the people that are in them. The success of these methods is pretty variable still, but over recent versions of PSE, I think it's improved considerably. And in addition to these automatic ways of identifying people, there are some very straightforward manual ways as well. So if you have a picture with somebody in it and PSE can't work out who that person is, provided you can tag the picture with the name of that person as well. So in this section we're going to look at both the manual and automated ways of tagging pictures with the people that are in them. But first of all, we have to check one or two setup items in your preferences. In the organizer, go to Preferences, and the page you need is the Media Analysis page. Now in the top section of that page, People View Settings, you should make sure that Run Face Recognition Automatically is checked, because from now on we are going to be running face recognition automatically. PSE has greatly improved its facilities for recognizing people, so face recognition has improved, and over a period of time PSE should get better at recognizing the people in your images. If at any time you want to reset the face recognition analysis details that PSE has established so far, there is a Reset Face Analysis button there. Click that and it will basically reset its face analysis data. But if you look at the note underneath there, resetting will delete all existing people stacks. One of the other settings on that page is Analyze Media for Smart Tags. You may remember earlier on in the course when we were looking at smart tags, I pointed out that some people like smart tags, some people don't like smart tags. If you don't want PSE to try to identify smart tags, you can uncheck that now and it won't do that. In fact, I'm going to switch it off myself because I don't particularly use smart tags. So, having checked those settings, click on OK. And then on the View menu, make sure that People Recognition is checked, because we want PSE to recognize people in images. I talked earlier on in the section about having many pictures with many people in. You may well have noticed that on the course so far, very few of the pictures have people in them at all. But some of them have had, and we're going to import some pictures soon which have people in them. Let's look first at the ones that have got people in them. If I click on the People tab, then a little like the Events option that we looked at in the preceding section, you have unnamed people. At the moment there aren't any indicated. You have named people. Again, there aren't any. But if I go back to unnamed, there's a little checkbox on the left there, Hide Small Stacks. When PSE finds people in images, it makes stacks of what it believes to be the same person. If it just finds individuals, perhaps just in one picture, it makes what are called small stacks out of those. And by default they're hidden. I'm going to unhide the small stacks, and in fact PSE 15 has identified 3 people, or what it believes to be 3 people, in pictures. One thing you'll realise very soon is that PSE 15 quite frequently suspects that something is a person that isn't a person at all, but all 3 of these are definitely people. Let's set about identifying one of them. Let's start with the girl. This is the girl that was in the picture with the dog. If I click on add name, I'm going to type in her name and click the checkbox. She is no longer an unrecognized person. She is now a named recognized person. So if I go to named, you can see that she is now one of my named people. The little blue triangle on the left there just indicates that this is a new face. And underneath Christine, I have an option of either showing photos with her in them or her face in those photos. So if I select the photos option, I'll see the photos underneath. If I select the faces option, I'll see her face in those photos. In the same way, I can go back to my unnamed people again and set about naming those other two people. What I'm going to do now then is to import another batch of images. This will basically achieve the same effect as if I were getting these from a camera, of course, and with people recognition enabled, PSE will try to match any faces that it detects in the pictures to the faces of people that it already knows about. Now there are various reasons that this won't work. For instance, if you have side-on views of faces, it seldom works, if at all, and of course a person's face may not be shown in the picture, in which case you'll have to manually tag that picture as having that particular person in it. But people recognition generally works quite well, and of course it's worth remembering that you might even have problem yourself recognizing somebody in a particular image if they were perhaps pulling a bit of a funny face or wearing clothes that they don't usually have, or maybe just had their hair arranged differently. So let's do an import of a batch of pictures into my catalogue. I'm going to import all of these pictures, so I'm going to click on Get Media. Note a couple of options there on the import dialog. Automatically fix red eyes. Well, I'm not particularly bothered about that, but I'm going to enable it anyway. And automatically suggest photo stacks. That's probably not relevant in this particular case, but let's enable that anyway. Bear in mind that when people recognition is being used, this can take quite a while, because it does take PSE a while to do an analysis of each image to see if there are any people in it. So click on Get Media, Fixing Red Eyes, Analyzing Media, and the 10 media items were imported. Let's now go to People. And one of the things that can be a little bit surprising is that it can take a while for this to work, so you do need to give it time for it to work its way through. Also remember that it's not going to discriminate between people you know that are in your pictures and people who just happen to be there. So you'll very often have to sort of ignore the people that aren't really any of your friends or neighbours or colleagues. They're just people that happen to be there at the time. One of the faces here is definitely one that I know, and that is Christine C. She's in one of these small stacks, but because part of her face is obscured, the PSE hasn't been able to recognise that it's her. If I click in Add Name and start typing her name, as I type, PSE will present the names of any people that it already knows about whose names begin in that way. So C there gives me Christine C. Click on Christine C. She's now been recognised. Note also that there's a second picture there, possibly a very similar picture. Again, that's Christine as well. Now, one other person that I know about here is this guy. His name is Chris, and his name is Chris C. So I'm going to type his name in. And this guy is called Larry R. I know him as well. Most of the other people here are what I'll call bystanders in some of these pictures. And if, first of all, I don't know who they are, and even if I did, I wouldn't be including them in my people tags. If I select one of them, right-click, say Don't Show Again, selected faces will never be visible again in people view. Do you want to continue? Click OK. That's got rid of one of those people. Let me go through the others that I don't want. The ones that I've left are ones that I'm going to return to later on when I've got a little bit of spare time. Let's go now to Named, And of course we've got 3 named people now, and in Christine's case we've got 3 pictures of Christine. 2 of them may look very similar, but they're actually subtly different pictures. Let's go back to the media and look at the most recent batch and look at some of the pictures which didn't appear to have people in them. Let's look, for example, at that picture. Now that particular image has a lady in it, and it's a lady whose name I know, but because she's sideways on and wearing dark glasses, etc., PSE didn't even recognise that she was in the picture. Now sometimes it won't recognise a person even if they're full face on, and this can be due to all sorts of obstructions or particular features of the image. One thing that you can try is to mark a person's face using the Mark Face feature here. So clicking on Mark Face, getting that frame, I can move it up to a person's face. Now generally speaking, this only really works with full-on faces anyway, not with side views. But if you were doing that, you could frame the face, click, and what we have now is a named person, and then I can add that person's name. She is now a named person, even though PSE would struggle to identify her in other pictures because all we've got is a side view of her face. Let's go back to that batch. And the picture here has Kaylee in it as well, even though you can't even see her head. So what I'm going to do with this one is I'm going to bring up the keywords info tag, and one thing I can do there is drag her tag onto her picture or picture onto the tag. Now when I go to people, go to Kaylee, I've got 2 pictures even though neither of them has an identifiable face in it. In just a moment I'm going to try and import yet another batch of pictures and see how we do with that. But just before we do, one other thing about people. I've mentioned groups once or twice, and the groups panel is shown on the right. Note the little button down here at the bottom right hand corner of the display, groups, that I can show or hide. When you've got a lot of people, you may want to create groups of people. So for instance, you may want just to be able to show your family. So if you take people related to you and put them in the family group, in which case we could drop him onto the family group, or indeed drop the family group onto him. And similarly, colleagues might include Chris C, whereas friends would include Christine C and Kaylee R. Now if I click on a group, colleagues, family, friends, and then right at the top, all people. And of course you can create your own groups, and you can have a list of ungrouped people as well. So let's import one last batch and see what happens. There they are, we'll get them all. It's analysing them. In importing this batch, it's proposing some stacks based on visual similarity. I'm not going to stack any of those because I'm more interested in identifying the people, although I'm pretty sure looking at those suggested stacks that each stack is of the same person. So I'm going to not stack those at this stage. Let's go back to people and see what it's made of that lot. Chris C, for example. Notice with those 3 blue triangles, that indicates that PSE thinks that it has found new images for each of those 3 people. I haven't confirmed those yet, but PSE 15 thinks that's what it's found. So let's go to Chris C first. Photos, there's that one. Faces. Now there are 3 more that it thinks are Chris C, and in each case it's true, so I'm going to tick that one. I'm going to tick that one. If this one I didn't think was Chris C, all I would need to do would be to press the cancel button, and that won't be allocated as a picture of Chris C. And that'll go back into the pot of unassigned ones. But I've now got 3 confirmed faces for Chris C. And you can see, even with that fairly simple example, that once you start getting people recognised, people recognition in PSE does become more efficient, and you start to be able to import quite a lot more pictures and do the people recognition and confirmation with a lot less effort. That's the end of this section. I'll see you in the next one.